Hmm. So welcome everybody on Zoom and YouTube. This is a hybrid stream for an hour or so, and what simply appears to be happening in these meetings is an open exposure, really. The word exposure seems to be preferable somehow because it can't be legitimately said that this is being described when there's no sense of something to be described. It can't be said that there's a pointing to because there's no sense that there's a separate something to point to, like the moon and the finger. There's obviously no sense that there's a teaching seeming to happen here. There's no sense that this, what is being expressed, if you like, is going anywhere or coming from anywhere or trying to make something happen or change or become. There is only this open exposure, which is a pointing out of what is already, what is and what is not. And that is simply this, really. It is so simply what is appearing to happen, and there's no sense that actually means anything or that actually has any value of any kind because it's so total that it is unrelatable, non-relative, so absolute that there's just simply this. And whatever is appearing is this. Whatever is appearing is this. So all thoughts and ideas, all imagined objects, which are suggested to not really be objectified, is this. And storytelling can seem to happen, which is also this. But the story or the stories that this seems to appear as are seeming to identify that there is something else other than this. The story that this came from somewhere, that this has an origin, or that this has a destiny, that this has a destination to reach, to move towards or away from, that this could actually move this way or that way and go and change and become. But that kind of directional reality is relative, and what is suggested, proposed, is that there is actually no real relativity. There is no real direction or dimension. Those are just empty appearances. But immediacy seems apparent without something that would claim to have dimensions like a real here and a real there, or a real now and a real then. So non-dimensional, non-dimensional immediacy is everything. It's total, it's absolute, it's unconditional. And so in that absolute, all-encompassing, elusive nothingness, there is only what appears to be happening. And so there's no way to get to that or away from that. So what really is expressed is it is absolute total immediacy. So relativity would mean distance, it would mean separation, it would mean someone and something, subject, object. But this exposure is pointing out that this is freedom already. Freedom unconditionally so. Freedom so free that it could appear to be bounded, it could appear to be separate, it could appear to be contracted and concentrated, located and whatever else. But there is only this. There is only this. There's nothing else other than this. No one ever finds anything else other than what's appearing to happen. There's never been a discovering of anything other than what's simply appearing to happen. There's just beliefs and opinions and storytelling that there is something else or somewhere else to get to one day in an imagined future at a distance from now. But that story has no reality and no basis, nothing to stand on even. It's like a phantom. a phantom claim that there is something else somewhere else, and this just isn't sensed as a reality without an apparent energy of wanting and waiting for what's apparently next, whatever that might be, whatever story it's wrapped up in or as. There's only immediacy, and it only ever seems to be to apparently return to that. Of course, return suggests direction too, so it's somewhat poetic to say it like that. But there can seem to be an energy of waiting around for something to happen, a next. So already, this is already free, it's already total, it's already complete. But it's not a kind of nice, warm, you know, furry, coated, relaxing, tranquil, blissful freedom that someone imagined as a state or an experience. It's so free that it's absolutely everything already. And so uh, there can seem to be some kind of resonance around this. Of course, that's another empty appearance, so there's no value given to that. It's not like that's more or less, you know, non-duality. But there can seem to be a resonance to this, and there can also seem to be a resistance to this, and everything is equally this. So whatever response is appearing to happen is simply this directionless freedom, already total. So we can have a dialogue around this. There can be a bit of a play with questions and answers and comments and remarks and whatever else, freely expressing as whatever is happening without a driver, without a receiver or a giver. And I'll be answering questions on YouTube, remarks there. How can I join the Zoom meeting? It's on the website, which I will share now. So someone kicks off the questions before the intro even started with hello, hello, Demetrius or Dimitri. If we say that thought is responsible for division, this is not a claim, it is an observation without the observer. So I don't recall there being a claim that thought is responsible for division. No, thoughts are just this being thoughts, it would seem. I mean, to call it a thought makes it a noun, and that naturally sounds like an object, a something that someone relates to, so it will never be accurate. But there's just thinking or there isn't. But thoughts are not responsible really for anything. They're just thoughts or thinking appearing to happen, like anything else. Thoughts are not more or less this. There is no more or less this. There is only this. Souls are another appearance like subtle separation. Soul really seems to be a story. The soul is like a story about an entity that continues through time and space and moves from one body to another. It's a story, it would seem. Are you enlightened? Oh, the big E question. Wow. There's no one to be enlightened. Yeah, there is no real entity to be enlightened. Neither is there an entity to be unenlightened. Thank God for that. There are no real entities. Yes, the dream is that there's entities and that there are some that are enlightened and some that are unenlightened, and this is a dream. There's no real discernible difference or similarity because there's no real between without two, without separation. And that's the exposure on behalf of nothing and no one. When we observe them, meaning thoughts, I'm guessing, without the observer, we can see that they create feeling and conflicts, right? Well, that's an interpretation. That's an interpretation that's coming from nowhere. I mean, that what is being suggested is that the observer itself is the illusory reality of division and separation. There isn't actually really an observer happening, as radical, dynamic, and perhaps even balmy as that sounds. It's that there is actually no real located center that is behind the thoughts watching them. That is the illusion. It's the dream. As though that illusorily apparently departs, there's no one to be aware of, observing, or witnessing thoughts or anything else. There is only immediacy, and that is completely incomprehensible. Everything is that, and yet no one could know it. There is no one to know it. The story about souls can still appear. Yes, anything can appear. We are here is also another story. So yes, the we is is a kind of division, and here is also a proposition that there's a location, and that too is not real. No here, no we, just this. You cannot know that there's nothing to be found. Can you say something about that? So the you in the sentence is the illusion, basically. The you that can't do something is not there. And if all of this is actually nothing, there's that can't be found. It's not a thing to be found. So, well, then there's just this, simply this, already absent, already void and empty, and totally everything as well, whole and free and full and completely nothing, nothing at all. So the dialogue goes on. Awareness happens without the aware being. I feel that we get stuck through words. Observation without observer is what is. And when we observe without the observer, we can see the causes. Right. All of that sounds like total story-based dream stuff. There is no observing going on without an observer. It's that simple. Without the observer, there's no observing at all. There's only immediacy. And yes, words are not describing this. They are not possibly ever going to step outside of immediacy to accurately or inaccurately describe this empty appearance, which they too are part of, seemingly part of, and yet not even really part or a part. There's just immediacy being words, terms, concepts, suggestions, and perhaps analyzing and trying as well. But none of it is getting anywhere. None of it's going anywhere. None of it is reaching anything because this is already total.
Hi, Alex. Can I ask something?
Yeah, absolutely. Hello.
If every word is, um, as you said, is pointing to something, the words that you use for this message are, in a way, they don't have any meaning or any sense. It's just
Absolutely.
Um, let's say it can also be a song you sing or a
Yeah.
dance you dance or it doesn't matter. But in the kingdom of words, normally the mind tries to understand and have a goal and get it. And this is not possible, as you said. No, it's not. I cannot get this message. It's not for understand and in a way it's a little bit absurd, no, to sit here and talk and to trying to understand and when there's nothing to understand. In a way it's a little absurd theater, isn't it?
It's yeah, there can be a wonderfully divinely meaningless absurdity to this, yes. Yeah. The absurdity that someone could get something out of this, yeah. Or that there really could be a destination to arrive. I mean, this is home, really. This is home to everything, and yet nothing is separate from it to be in it. So then the words don't point to that. They are that. So the words don't actually have value because they're not transactional. They're not actually giving something. They're not pointing in any direction. They are just simply an empty exposure that what is longed for is actually already this. Yeah.
So I'm asking, I'm trying to get, is this kind of setting not a little bit kind of misleading? Because normally in a talk, we always try to understand each
It would
other.
only it would only be misleading if I was pretending that I had something for you.
Uh,
Yeah. It would only be misleading if I this sitting apparently here is actually pretending to offer you something. Yeah, that pretended that you could get something out of this or get somewhere with this. Yeah, that's how it would be misleading. But it can't be made clearer than that, that there is nothing to get and nowhere to get to.
I
That
mean,
this
I don't think that you are misleading, but the setting of a talk is always trying in 99.9% of setting when we talk is I try to understand with my mind and then the same time you say there's nothing to really understand and this is the message what's happening right now. This is it. It's nothing to get
Mm.
but it's a little bit confusing for my mind. No?
Yeah. It's just this, simply this, appearing as an attempt to get somewhere, that's all.
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah. So naturally, because we're not getting on with any asanas or practices or exercises or meditations of any kind, there's
Yeah.
just speaking appearing to happen. So conditionally, there's just an energy that seems to think perhaps that this is through some understanding to get somewhere. It's not through a practice or an exercise. It's not through a ritual. It's through an understanding, through talking about it. But that too is just another direction, which isn't actually getting anywhere. Yeah.
Mhm. Yeah.
So this isn't through. I mean, understanding may appear to be happening, and there's nothing wrong with it at all. But what is more dynamic, it would seem, is a basking, a resonating, perhaps for some. Yeah, and
Mhm.
that's also heading nowhere, of course. There's just basking. There's just this timeless basking of
It's,
unknowability, absolute immediacy.
it's a senseless play or playing with words.
Absolutely, yeah. Senseless play. I like it.
It's a little bit. I'm still in this absurdity nothing because this is um, it, in a way it's so ridiculous that um, yeah yeah I cannot explain it in a different way. uh, mm,
That can be a great deal of laughter in the revelation that there was never anywhere to get to, never anywhere to get away from either.
and it's also in a way it's also sad because this mind or this thing here that believes that it's a body always thought that it could get something out of
Mm.
it and, and it's oh I cannot grasp it. It's like wow. And it's sad and it's ridiculous at the same time.
Mm. Yeah.
Whew. Yeah, thank you.
Thank you. I spoke to someone from a spiritual background about this, so this is exciting. I wonder how this went down. He agreed. I'm just joking, just being playful. He agreed completely, but said that all practices are meant to exhaust the seeking energy in the story. What do you think about this? Well, it's another process, of course. It's another process to imagine that you could use a thorn to get rid of a thorn. Well, there is no real thorn to get rid of, and there is no problem to solve without duality, without separation, without direction and destination. There is only immediacy. So all practices are just practices. All exercises are just exercises. There's no right or wrong direction. There's just what's happening, what's appearing to happen. Yeah. So practices are not going anywhere and they're not going nowhere. They're just what's happening or appearing. And there's no sense that anything goes in any right or wrong direction. Because the idea there is that if you stopped practicing, then this would be more whole somehow. Well, that's a conditional wholeness. It's got nothing to do with that. And the idea that you could keep practicing to exhaust the practicing energy too, of course, is another subtle sort of imagined direction to get somewhere. To seek to stop seeking. Well, there is just seeking, or there isn't. So awareness is another illusion, someone asks. Awareness means there's something or someone being aware of something. Yes, it would seem so. That's the way it's talked about in this meeting, really. In other apparent places, it might be suggested that awareness goes beyond the subject that is aware, and this can understand the proposition of that, but it really just doesn't seem to be apparent without that illusory separate subject. All awareness and therefore all sense of distance, real distance between solid and separate things, collapses. And then without any distance or separation or even relation, there's only immediacy, which isn't sensed as aware, it isn't sensed as conscious either. It's not sensed as any kind of entity or individual that could be knowing of anything else. How does heart come into this? Love comes from the heart, keeper of the soul. So heart, you could say, is just a well, it's a word for energy, maybe. I mean, heart is an appearance, it would seem. Emotion is an appearance. Caring, tenderness, gentleness. These are appearances. I mean, all there is what is appearing to happen. Um, but what's suggested is love. And the way in which love seems to be talked around loosely, at least in this meeting, is unconditional love. And unconditional love is absolute and it's boundless and it's free. And there is nothing to connect up to that. There's nothing to be separate from that. There's nothing else other than that because it's total. So it doesn't have an origin. And therefore it doesn't come from the heart, really. It is absolute. If this is all there is, then who can stop seeking energy? Right, so the who is the claim of a subject. The who is the claim that there's a someone to find something or to stop something. That who isn't there. In the story of seeking or the fizzling out of such is the same immediacy. The story seems to be a claim that immediacy isn't really. The story seems to be telling about something else, somewhere else. That, time and space, it's dimensional. Story is about what's next, what happened, what will happen, what could happen. It's about direction. So that kind of suggests the absence of immediacy or distance. And really that just is what's appearing to happen as well. But the story isn't real. Whatever story is happening, it isn't real. It has no reality to it. It's just fantasy, really. It's just fantasy. It's this playfully appearing as fantasy and imagination and stories. Yeah. What knows that this is all there is, this already? What is so certain it knows anything at all? Without a self or a knower, how can that body even try to express it knows anything at all? It doesn't. It doesn't. There's no subject behind these words, or any words. There's just speaking appearing to happen, with no certainty and no doubt either. So again, apparently again, no real accuracy or inaccuracy, no real description, no real elaboration, when all there is immediacy, and immediacy right now, apparently now, appearing as talking. That's all. Appearing as screens and walls and colours and sounds and smells, but all of it is not really distant and nothing can ever know that. So it doesn't make sense. It certainly doesn't make rational or relative sense. It's exposing on behalf of no one that there's no real relationship, no real relativity without distance and separation. So although there may seem to be a clarity, or maybe there seems to be a distortion in what's being said, and although there may seem to be conviction or clearness, or even a confidence, well, that's just what is appearing. There's no one to know that or to have it. There's no one to express it in any right or wrong way. There is only this effortless, energetic play of everything, which is nothing. Nothing is excluded from that. Nothing is outside of that. It's so all-encompassing. And it won't ever convince that energy, like that illusion that really feels like it's separate from what's being said right now. It can't there can't be it doesn't seem like there can really be a convincing that this is actually true. It's too invested, it would seem, in its own reality of being a separate person or a separate thing. It's too invested in that to actually really seem to come around to this or even hearing it. If there's no separate self, then there's no free will, because free will means someone separate from this. But God, it appears like we are in control. Well, of course, if it seems like there's a we, it seems like there's control. What is exposed is that energy which would seem so real, so viscerally real, like it's really there, is not there. It's not actually there. A wonderful magic trick appearing on behalf of nothing. There never is control or was control in an apparent past. There's no control. There's no one to have control. So there's only this immediacy, and it only ever seems to come back to that, never even was away from it. This is all and none. When it's said that there is no one to say anything, it's just words coming. Is this another explanation? Not really. Not really. Yeah, there isn't actually something to explain or describe. It's so mind-blowing that there's no one here, no thing here, and yet it feels like we are here knowing this. Well, what's been apparently exposed is that here-ness is simply energy, energy in that form. But it's made of nothing. It's like it's thinner than a wisp of smoke. It's so insubstantial. There's no solidity or reality to it. As though it disappears. It's like there was nothing ever even to relate to called me or contracted energy or any other apparent word that could try to pin that down and name it, define it, claim it.
Alexis, could you say that the here-ness is the peace that passes all understanding,
Mm. The here is the dream, really.
dream of the me?
We dream of there being a position. The me seems to be a story about a person, which is a phantom. No one ever, there's never a finding of that actually. Yeah. The peace that passeth understanding, at least this is an interpretation, so make of it what you will, but the peace that passeth understanding is unconditional love, which is completely everything. So no one can understand that this unconditional peace is actually war and devastation and terror, angst and pain and loss and grief as well as the joy and the bliss and the tenderness. It's like that can't be understood. So that's why it's suggested that that's the peace that passeth understanding, because it passeth duality, it passeth polarity and conditionality. As soon as you say that's what it is and that's what it's not, well, then it's tangible because it's conditioned.
Mhm.
Peace that passeth understanding, well, I would suggest that that's absolutely unconditionally everything, not polarized. So it doesn't even exist in relation to an opposite.
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah, yeah. There seems to be a sense of that here, but yeah, that's still seems maybe like subject object.
Mm, mm.
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah, yeah, yeah. But it doesn't seem to be related to.
No. No.
Mm, yeah, thank you.
Thank you. Saying that there is no knowing or knowledge sounds like it is based on knowledge. Well, if that's what seems to be happening, then that's what seems to be happening. If everything that exists is here, why are emotions felt directly, but when they appear over there in others, I only see expressions? If this is everything, shouldn't those emotions be felt here too? No, the here is the illusion. And existence too is the illusion. Exist. There's no separation. There's no existence without separation. So there's nothing being everything. There are no separate things that are identified by separate people. Like these emotions belong to you over there, and these feelings and thoughts belong to that over there, and these sensations and perceptions belong to me over here. There's no here and there. It's a dream. So nothing actually belongs to anyone or anything. There's only immediacy. It's not objectifiable. There are no objects, no separate things, and no separate people. Honestly, Alexis, this makes sense about everything. That there's no one here is actually merciful. Being someone is suffering. So I would agree that being someone is suffering, but the exposure that there's no one here is anything but merciful. It's compassionately merciless because the exposure and its dynamism is well, it would seem to be interpreted, at least for many, as such a confrontation that it's too radical for that energy, that illusory energy that seems to desperately want to remain separate. The merciless compassion is exposing that that's not even there to depart. There's such an openness that can seem so loving and compassionate and free, and yet it's kind of merciless. Doesn't concede or compromise with that. There's no even meeting that. There's no position to actually destroy or create, yeah, or to sustain and maintain. So poetically, it can seem to have a Kali-like expression, exposing that which the dream seeker does not want to see. It's interpreted as violent, as hostile, perhaps, to that energy which feels like it desperately wants to be mollycoddled and told and validated that it is a real entity. It doesn't meet that. There's no meeting that. There's no, cradling it with tenderness. It's interpreted as like as something wrathful, perhaps. But for others, it seems to be interpreted as something loving and graceful. So these are where these poetic, symbolic archetypes seem to appear from, it would seem. What do you mean by Kali-like expression? So basically, Kali is a story. It's not something that's actually real. There are no real things or entities, but it just seems to be a poetic story about that which is not separate and therefore not a person or a thing. That which is therefore unconditional and absolutely total is exposing that there's no separation, that there's no relationship, there is no owner, that nothing is owned by anything, that nothing is known by anyone, and that nothing belongs to and is done by anyone. And so the humiliation of that dynamic exposure is sort of like, well, you see in the pictures of Kali Ma and the Dakinis in the Buddhist traditions as something quite full on in the appearance, wearing schools around the neck. It's exposing that not even your head belongs to you because you're not there to own it. The skirt of arms dangling around the waist. No one utilized or did or applied anything. It's such an embrace in a way. It's an embrace of that which wasn't apart or divided or united. It's a symbol of the exposure that there's no one separate from what is. There only is what is and is not. There's no one to live or die. There's no one to be born. There's no one to remain. And there's no one to go away. There's only this absolute unconditional namelessness, which is neither alive or dead. So nothing is true and everything is allowed by no one. Well, you could say that nothing is true or false because there is no relativity and there's no truth or falsity without relativity, it would seem. So there's nothing to relate to, there's nothing to stand up to. And this unconditional allowance is impersonal. So then everything is already this. Nothing ever becomes anything, and nothing can't get outside of itself to know itself. So it creates time and space to experience itself. Well, it doesn't, there's not an it to do that. And yes, there's no becoming without continuity. So yes, there's no dimension without separation. There's no getting in or out of. And yet, energetically, there can seem to be these dimensions appearing, but there's no actual realness to anything. There's nothing anywhere. There's nothing to actually find or lose or get rid of or get a hold of. And that just simply can't be described what that's like because it's not like anything. It's absence. It's total total absence. The exposure of this would seem to be seen by the radical non-dualists only after seeking an awakening of Alexis, Tony, Jim, and Andreas. Is this a story of coincidence? It's a story which isn't real. There's no one to realize this. There's no one to see this. This isn't seen because this isn't objectified. So it just seems like for some bodies, which even that is too much, even that is story based. But it just seems like for a story's sake, which has no realness whatsoever, that there's just an opening, an openness, or a receptivity. But it's not personal. It doesn't belong to anyone. It's the illusory end of a dream of there ever being someone. So that can't be owned. It can't be special. It can't even be really applied to a body, let alone a person or a character. It's not even there. So this exposure is not limited to these words, to these meetings. Everything is exposing this. Everything is singing the song of freedom. There's just no one to stand behind or away from that, even a millimeter away from that, to know that. So that energy, which would seem in its illusory naivety to try and understand this, wants to be apart from it so it can say, ah, I understand now. I know, I realize, I recognize, I relate, I own, I am. Is there a God or an intelligent designer or a creator of the appearance? What is suggested is the appearance is absolutely everything and there is only that, which is nothing at all. There's nothing else other than that. So there can't be a creator of that. There can't be a God, like some kind of entity God that is overseeing this appearance without telling a story and implying or imposing separation. So this appearance is absolute. There's only that, and it's not substantial. There's no realness, there's no solidity to this. So nothing is creating this. and nothing is destroying this when this is simply all there is. So this nothing that's appearing as people, planets, emotions, etc., can't know itself because knowing implies someone who can know this when there's no one here. Yes, exactly. So knowing does seem to imply, the word seems to imply that there's a separate someone to know, separate somethings. So appearance and disappearance. Nothing stays in between. So there's no between. There's no between. There's just appearance. There's not even disappearance because disappearance suggests something is going, that there's time, really. What's meant by appearance is total everything, equanimous, timeless thisness. So this is appearing, but there's no happening. You could say that this is nothing appearing to happen, but there's only that. There's no before. There's nothing else to refer to in a past, in a place other than this. There is only this. Without a before, without an after, without a now and then, without a what's next, without a here and a there, or even a where. There's only this immediacy. No gap, no beginning, no end, yes. No timeline, no consistency or continuity. No thing to hold on to grasp. Nothing to let go of, nothing to surrender, accept, allow, or forgive. It's just this freedom. So total, so immediate, so vibrantly everything, and nothing at all. The realness that seems to appear is kind of an illusion of deadness, and yet that would claim to be life. There is only this absolute totality, which is neither alive or dead. And that isn't objectifiable. It's not subjectifiable. It defies definition. So then there's just this namelessness, which is singing and dancing and playing and screaming is absolutely everything. And yet there is nothing else other than that to know that there is only what is appearing to happen, which is nothing at all. Lots of love, everyone. Thank you all. Thanks for the donations. Much appreciated.